Hey, thank you guys for joining us. My name is Scott Rennick. I'm the publisher and owner of the Climbing Business Journal, and really excited today to get into the new USA Climbing and CWA route setting certification and integration. But before we begin, and before I hand it off to our hosts, I just want to make a quick shout out to Cascade Specialty, who has decided to sponsor these webinars. If you haven't heard of them, look them up, cascadespecialty.com. They make incredible floorings. They've been doing it since the late 90s. They've been building flooring and refurbishing flooring for a whole lot of climbing gyms and big and small. So check them out. And then a quick shout out to Vortex before I hand it to them. We've been working with Justin and Foxman for a couple of years. I first met them at the CWA Summit a couple of years ago, where they were presenting some of their kind of first of the industry route setting workplace data that they collected and presented. And I just means a lot to me that how much they give to the community. That data, you can find it at vortexroutesetting.com. They make a lot of it available for free. They publish, they presented a lot of the summits, and they also both volunteer in the CWA committees for work at height and route setting, and it's just a privilege to work with them. They've also been the head route setter for multiple facilities, so if you run a program for multiple gyms, they know what it's like. And it's been an honor to work with them. So I'm going to hand it over to them, and they're going to be running this thing. Thanks.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Scott.
Scott. So today we also have Jeremy Ho, or for a lot of people, Jay Ho. I guess I should introduce you as well because you're here. So Jay Ho is the manager of the USAC National Route Setting Program. He is an L5 National Chief. Previously, he's held some positions at both Touchstone, Sport Rock. He's similar to Fox and I, run gyms in the same capacity, but we're here to talk about USAC. So thanks for being here, Jeremy.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks. So I think the first thing that we should do is kind of announce what we're talking about and give some context to it. USA Climbing has had route setting certification programs for, gosh, Jeremy, how long has it been? Like 15, 10 years, 15 years?
20 years, 20 years,
20
2006
years.
origins.
Okay, so about 20 years, the Climbing Wall Association has been providing different types of certifications for like different lengths of time. The Climbing Wall Instructor Program has been around for a minute. The Work at Height program has been around for longer. We now have the Professional Route Setting certification that's been up and running for a couple of years now. So for like a little bit of context, I serve as the education consultant for the Climbing Wall Association's Work at Height and Professional Route Setting committees and all of that stuff. I totally lost my train of thought, guys. I'm so sorry, but I assume everybody knows what I'm saying. And we've been working to develop these certification programs for route setters. And so we are integrating these two certification programs so that the Climbing Wall Association's certifications for route setters will become prerequisites for Jeremy, the USAC certifications. Yeah. I
Yeah.
said so many words so
Uh,
fast. I'm so sorry.
no, you're good. That's a good start to the conversation. Um, I think, prior to this PRS system rolling out, there has only been one avenue for education or certification or whatever you want to call it in our little bubble that we exist in. And USA Climbing has never been interested in providing a commercial certification. Um, it's long overdue. It's something that, I mean, gosh, going back to 2016, there were conversations around creating this, work at height standards and all these different things and professionalizing what we're trying to do. So I think it only makes sense for there to be a parallel. Not everybody's interested in entering into the competition environment as a setter, and to give people an alternative and an option to get education, to get information and basic knowledge of how to do this thing, all the way up to like relatively advanced. Like your guys' PRS2 goes into like not the competition organization and things, but like my understanding is like pretty in-depth movement-based stuff that through our conversations only makes sense to give people a foundation to come into our system. and kind of ensuring that they're at like a bare minimum understanding and foundation of a proper safety, attaching holds and volumes and all the different things, but also an understanding of how to move, and gives us a little bit of a gauge of where people are at.
Yeah, I
I
assume that
think
most. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think that the parallels make a lot of sense. Like, I think a lot of route setters who are in the US are working primarily at a climbing gym, right? Maybe it's like a 90-10 split or something like that. There's like a few people that I can think of that are doing a lot more competition work. But I think thinking about, a brand new route setter who is coming in to teach them how to do the thing, right? Like the onus is often on the gyms. There isn't like up until now a standardized sort of set of approaches that you can kind of like engage, online content followed by an assessment of some sort, and then all of a sudden just like have this almost resume building component where you're like, yes, I can hand this off to say I want to get a job. And, if I'm in a hiring position, I could say, oh, by the fact that this person has these certifications, I know that they can do these things. I think it makes a lot of sense.
So I'm
Yeah,
kind of
instills a lot
curious.
more confidence in the hiring. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, no worries. So I'm assuming that a lot of people listening to this or watching this are going to be route setters. But speaking to kind of both of your points, Justin, if there's hiring managers or GMs who are trying to like figure out one, how to hire, two, how to train, for a long time, because the USAC certifications were the only step forward, that was just kind of what hiring managers were looking for. Is like, do you have your L1, your L2, your L3? So it might be helpful to look at the difference between what the USAC certifications are testing and what the PRS certifications are, providing that minimum standard for like somebody like a gym owner who might not be as like entrenched in the system as we are. So yeah, Jeremy, can you speak a little bit to like what you guys are, testing in these clinics and like the different certification levels?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think as somebody that has been in like a hiring manager position in commercial gyms, like, I mean, there definitely is value to seeing USA Climbing certified level fill in the blank after someone's name. Um, but I will say, like, the only thing for me personally that, and I think it should be for most people, is that it shows that these people have invested in their craft, right? Um, when you get a little higher up into the USA climbing system, I think you are definitely learning leadership skills and organizational skills that transfer to head setter positions and different things in commercial gyms. Um, but it by no means says that this person's qualified or good for your general community, or that that they can put like really good 510s or V3s on your walls, or understand really like the day-to-day workflow of a commercial climbing gym. Um, so yeah, I think our goals through our clinic and certification system are to prepare people right now that are interested to go through to become head route setters at different varying championship level events. So whether that's regionals at the level 3 with endorsements, or divisionals level 4 with endorsements, and nationals as a level 5 with just level 5 now. No more endorsements there. Um, so the I guess the objective and the goal of our certification system is, while very, very similar to creating a product that's intended for a specific end user, the outcome and the goal and the how narrow the ability of that user group is very, very different. Um, so yeah, there are for sure takeaways from our system that are applicable to commercial setting. Um, but I would not say that we're preparing people to be successful 3, 4, 5 day a week commercial route setters.
Yeah,
Other than the fact that you go to an event and you can grind really hard for 5 days.
it's just a very different end goal, right? Where I completely agree. If somebody has like a certain USAC level, I know that they've put in a lot of work into their craft. If somebody comes and applies for a position with their L1, I'm not always sure what that means. Um, and
Mhm.
by the time they get to you guys, setters should already be pretty familiar with these systems so that you can focus on, actually teaching setters the craft of setting for like a youth competition. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I think, and prior to this system rolling out, like the PRS and CWA system, I mean, our the pool of people that were going through this was so small. Like when I entered into the system, there were uh, a couple hundred people maybe like at the upper end, and now we're talking about people like numbers in the thousands of people that have gone through our system, and people that are still interested and still coming in. Um, Back then the pool of people, it was so new and so young that we just kind of assumed that people had made it into the system, and oftentimes were they proved that they had those skills. And these days you might have people coming to level one clinics, well, maybe up until this coming season, uh, where they all they have to do is read a recommended prerequisite of experience and then click enroll, and they show up, and they maybe don't have that, or maybe they have a some version of that level of experience, or they think they do, and they show up and they don't know some of the basics that we, when this system was built, anticipated all the people coming into it would have.
Well,
But as
and
it's grown, more and more people have interest into it. So yeah.
I still know people who are entering their level one with like 20 years of experience, right? Like that experience range is like so wide. And so I think it might be a really good time
Hmm.
to like talk about what the CWA's goal is with the PRS certifications in providing like a minimum standard. So I know I talk about it a lot. Justin, I would love to hear your like perspective on it because I usually just like dive in. I'm like certifications, this and this and this. So
Well, I think from my perspective, I think that I've been in this industry for almost 20 years now, and it's changed a lot. Um, I remember days back when I was like a baby route setter where it was like the Wild West, right? Like there was not a lot of rules, there's not a lot of protocols and policies, and I remember doing things that I would never do now, and maybe that's wisdom, and maybe that's just experience, or maybe that's a bit of a few other things. But I think now, as as organizations and the industry in general is like moving forward, um, there's a lot there's a lot more eyes. Even just the fact that everyone knows what free soloing is now because of Honnold and the movies. Like there are people coming into these gyms, like there's ocean inspectors, there's all sorts of things coming in. And so we also are living in the US where litigation is like a commonplace, right? And so I think all of these things have sort of moved us in a direction where we have to like look inward and look to grow, uh, look at regulations and look at practices and justify them or defend them and make sure that we're like using best practices. And the CWA is sort of like the perfect poised entity to be this sort of like this beacon of like this is what we should be putting forward. They've created the industry standards and best practices, and they're kind of like handing them to people, whether it be through certification or through publishing or what have you, to say like, hey, this is where we should be. And I bet if we looked at a bunch of different gyms across the country, we'd see all different types of things. Like um, there are many gyms that probably aren't working with a two rope system. There are as many gyms who are in the process of transitioning to it. So yeah, it's kind of a mixed bag. And I went off a little bit on a tangent, but I feel like
no,
that's where
really good.
I
Yeah.
look at it. That's where I come from,
Yeah.
assigning these sort of like minimum standards.
It's funny. I was talking as I drove down here yesterday with my dad and explaining kind of like the CWA's role, where like technically you can read all of the OSHA regulations or like whatever your particular local, health and safety regulations are, and you can interpret them. And there's a lot of ways to actually meet those. Like fall protection is like a really broad thing. So like I don't know, you can build scaffolding every time you need to like set up a route, right? Like there's ways to do stuff that isn't what we're doing. But the Climbing Wall Association is going through and like looking at all of those regulations and trying to provide best practices to meet those standards, interpret them in like a way that is actually functional for route setters, climbing gyms, etc. Um, so like thinking about minimum standards of certification as we go through our PRS levels, what we're like when I say we, like the CWA, what we're looking to do is basically define like if you have this certification, people should be able to expect that you have been trained to this minimum standard. Like, you might not put enough screws in that volume, but you have been told how many screws should be in that volume. You have been trained on how to ask questions about whether or not the difficulty is appropriate, or we're actually thinking about the audience for whom we're setting. And so really defining each of those components and being like, okay, so if you have your level 1 or your PRS ropes level 2, you have been trained to these base, standards. And they're very, very different than a lot of the competition side of things, but they still apply. Like, you should still know how to attach a thing to the wall. It's important all of the time, I think. Yeah. Um,
Yeah, for anybody that's listening or those of you that are on the call that watched Team Challenge this last weekend, there were, I don't know if it was on the broadcast or not, but there were a handful of things that had to be mid-round appropriately attached to the wall. So to your point, Foxman, even though we've been trained or we, understand and know these things, we make mistakes. But yeah, I think having at least something to be able to show that there has been training involved,
mhm.
especially when it comes to commercial facilities,
Well,
saying,
and if
look,
we're
here's a
doing
document that shows we've trained everyone how to do this.
exactly. Well, and to that, like, sometimes holds aren't manufactured in a way that like actually meets up with like the force that's being put on them. And so if we can show that we have appropriately attached them to the wall, then we can potentially see like, did this hole just break? Right? Like, it's not immediately, oh, it was the route setters not doing it. We can actually investigate where other issues are as well. Uh, Sorry guys, I keep like I have a knot in my shoulder. Oh no, too much
I
jugging.
see. I also see these are what we're describing right now as sort of like the foundational side, right? I think that's where it starts at the level 1 and level 2. It's like teaching the basics, and then as we scale up, like there's more intricacy added. And so I think like one of the questions that we get is, if I'm an experienced route setter, like what's the point? Like, should I know all of this stuff? And I'm kind of curious, Fox, because I imagine you might be asked that question more than I have been. What's your answer?
Gosh. I mean, from the PRS side, like, if you're an experienced route setter, you should know a lot of what is currently in our PRS level 1 and 2, right? Like, you should have a pretty good understanding of movement and how to approach tweaking a boulder or ropes. Um, But we also have the PRS provider, which we'll talk about a little bit later in this call, which is how to teach these skills. And we get asked not irregularly about how head route setters, even more senior route setters on their teams can develop better mentorship skills. And so the PRS provider looks a lot at those teaching techniques. So I, I think if we view route setting as just, bolt hold to wall, this is all there is, then like, yeah, there's not that much from it, but we all know that it's a much more nuanced craft than that. So we start with those fundamentals, and then we start looking at communication and how to like, actually mentor a team and develop a training program. I think Work at Height is a really great example. We've got, here's how you do the thing. Work at Height 2 is here's how you supervise the humans doing the thing. And Work at Height 3 is here's how we make decisions about how the thing is done. Like, it scales really differently. And the PRS program is still in development. We've got here's how you do the thing, and here's how you teach other people, or like assess whether or not they can do the thing. And we're still building the stuff in between. Yeah. Well, we should potentially look at why we are integrating these two programs, right? We've kind of laid out what each program is intended for and the goals. So, yeah, Jeremy, why are these becoming prereqs? Why are we doing it?
Well, I think back to kind of what I was saying earlier, the pool of people that are interested in doing setting, whether it's competition, commercial, or both, has grown so much over the years. And our system, previously being the only education opportunity or platform out there, hasn't really evolved to accommodate that, nor is it designed to, or nor are we looking to design it to. And that's, I think, where the integration made sense to work with the PR system that you guys have so diligently put together and created. as kind of a bit of a filter, really. I've taught a lot of the level one and level two clinics over the last 5 years, and um, sometimes you have people come in that don't have the basic safety, how to safely attach holds to the wall, um, you know, work at height under a stressful environment becomes an even more dangerous thing. Uh, Part of the reason that we have done away with the ropes portion of the level one clinics is because you put 20 people into unfamiliar space with systems that maybe they're not entirely used to that from their home systems. Oftentimes it was just like, here's how the house does it. Like you have to use their system. Um, and it just became a bit of a liability issue. Like 20 people, 35 feet up in the air. And like, as instructors, we're basically just like, I hope no one dies or kills somebody else, and you can't really focus on teaching those people as well as you would like to, when everybody's just in like a more stressful environment. Um, so I think, yeah, having this filter and this insurance for us that people have the base level foundational skills of being safe on a rope, creating safe space for others to work in and themselves, and then ensuring that they're properly attaching structures, holds, volumes, different things to walls. Um, kind of make sure that the host facility is left with a product that's not going to rip off the wall and potentially hurt somebody. Um, we always do our best as instructors to kind of inspect people's work as part of the kind of pass or fail of these clinics. But as I'm sure you guys all know, like having 20 setters that you don't know, you can't check every single box every single time. So yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense, and then it also gives people the option, like I said earlier, to like if setting competitions is not what they're interested in, they just want to go down like a 5-year career of setting commercially in a gym while they're doing their undergrad or they're doing whatever schooling, or they're post youth comp career and they want to get into this thing when they're 18, 19, 20 years old. There's an opportunity for them to understand how to do it well, do it to a minimum standard, um, and maybe give them a leg up on finding a position in a commercial gym. And then, yeah, for us, that filter is probably the biggest thing for us. Um, we have, gosh, anywhere from 8 to 10 level one clinics a year, which is what's enough, 160 to 200 people that go through that thing. Mm. Just making sure that those people each year meet that bare minimum of safety.
So
So
I realized,
uh, I'm thinking about like flipping this on switch. Like that's hard, right? Like, are you gonna just like turn it on? What's the plan for the rollout? I know that you've all thought this through, and I know there's a plan for the CWA, but for the listeners who aren't in those conversations, how are we trying to do this?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I believe Foxman and Garnett are going to be coming out to Salt Lake City in May, mid-May, and a handful of us as USA Climbing national head instructors will be taking a provider course. Provider course, is that the correct
yeah,
language?
exactly. Yeah, PRS
Great.
provider and work at height provider.
Yes. So we'll go through that training, which will allow us to then run these courses, assess and or certify people in the PRS and the work at height systems. Um, like I said, mid-May, I think right now the target is between 5 and 7 or 5 and 8. I can't remember the exact numbers of USA Climbing certified instructors to go through that course, understand the system firsthand and better, before, we're not just going to flip the switch to your point. Um, Target goal is for the 2027 season to have this in place as a prereq, um, and probably making an official, uh, what do you call it? Like a official steps of prereqs announcement on paper on the website, late summer around the time that applications will be open for next season's level twos. Um, and in the time between then, our hope is to try to start certifying up as many of our instructors and headsetters in our system as possible, just to make sure that we're setting an example. I mean, we had a long conversation around, between you guys and John Muse and a few other people and USA Climbing and Garnett at CWA. about how important it is for us as an organization that many people look to as um, sort of a, I don't know, I guess well, obviously a leader in the competition scene in America, but as a group of as an organization that should be leading by example. So the sooner we can start implementing these standards and tactics at our events and in our instruction and in our championship level events, um, the more we can spread the knowledge and make sure that it's being upheld and accurately introduced.
I realized that we never actually said which certifications were going to be prereqs for which certifications, and we should probably go into that like at least a little bit. So right now, the PRS level 1 and PRS level 2 boulders. So CWA split the level 2 into boulders and ropes because a lot of gyms don't have ropes. So why would somebody like want to certify their setters to go do whole rope stuff if they're just a bouldering gym? So PRS level 2, 1 and 2 boulders are going to be prereqs for the USAC level 1. Is that correct?
Yes. So yeah, the PRS level one is like the basics of ladder safety, hold installation, not so much heavily weighted on the movement stuff. And the PRS two starts diving into a little bit more of like understanding of techniques and movements and mechanics of setting.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that will become the prereq for our level one. And it just so happened to align where we took rope climbing out of rope setting out of our level one clinics just this past season, kind of around the time that we started these conversations. Great, that makes perfect sense. It aligns directly with the basics of what feels like the correct amount of experience to come into our level one clinics. And then the PRS, sorry, the work at height too. You're gonna have to correct me if I'm wrong
One.
here, guys, on the numbers. There's a lot of
Yes, the
new
work at height
certifications.
1.
Work at height one, work at height
Yeah.
one, which is rope safety, access, rescue.
Mhm.
To correct, okay, maybe I'm off
Yeah.
there a little bit. Does it involve
No, it's
rescue?
okay. Yeah, so the PRS2 ropes includes work at height 1. And so um usually we like when I do it as like a standalone course, I teach work at height 1 on day 1 and then on day 2 we set a rope route. And so we're basically adding material handling and navigating like actually doing all of that hauling, etc. on a rope. So you do the rope skills work at height 1 on day 1 and then the setting skills PRS2 ropes on day 2. Is again, I teach standalone courses and we can talk later about how like a lot of gyms are starting to integrate this into their training. Um, so you can do it various ways, but yeah.
Ultimately, the level two USAC certification will have a prerequisite of having the level two ropes, which is tethered to the work at height one certification.
Right. Yeah. So ensuring safety on the wall and understanding how to haul materials and install them and things like that. Yeah. And yeah, and that made sense to align with our level two, which has a 1 day of rope setting, practical, and then 2 days of bouldering. So we'll kind of ensure that uh, we know people coming in are qualified to leave the ground safely and install things on paper correctly onto the wall and navigate that space.
So this leads to like a big question, which is, if we are teaching the CWA work at height standard within, if that becomes a prerequisite for USAC clinics, at what levels of competition will USAC setters be expected to be using that, like the dual rope system with fall arrest and suspension? Because a lot of people are using it and a lot of people aren't using it within their daily work. So,
Yeah. So this season, to touch on like the work at height safety stuff, this season we are any championship, national championship level event where USA Climbing, and one of our event coordinators is the event coordinator for the event. We are implementing as much of work at height safety standards that the CWA has provided as possible. Um, Most of the time at these events, we are working in lifts when it comes to any of the work at height lead stuff. Um, but we've implemented helmets and full body harnesses with dorsal attachments and fall arrest systems in the lifts at all times. No more. sport harness and clipping an easy daisy to the edge of the basket, calling it good. We have a run of ASAPs along with some Petzl harnesses, full bodies that are dorsal attached to the correct points that meet OSHA standards, and then helmet use while belaying and all the different fun stuff that keeps people safe. In the events that we will have youth nationals or any large scale national event where the teams will be setting off of ropes, which for us would generally just be like collegiate or youth if it's in a facility. We will be doing our best to implement dual rope systems. We're currently in the process of trying to put together a fleet of full body harnesses and just all the equipment that we need to be able to ship to these events, and basically hold our setters accountable that are being contracted through USA Climbing, to uphold these standards. Um, in the future, our hope is that that'll trickle down to all championship level events. We are an NGB. We're not a we have no say over what host facilities do, but we will likely write into something into our host agreements that it's encouraged to follow these best practices and standards and provide the information. Um, we don't have the budget to purchase 19 kits or 18 kits of 12 and ship them to every regional in the country. Um, but yeah, the hope is that by setting that the example and leading by example, that the industry will follow suit and jump on board with this because it ultimately is most likely in all of our future. And not that it's safer, it's better, it's more professional.
Yeah, well, and for what it's worth, at least across the US, which is where we're all operating, we're talking about USA climbing, um, like that fall arrest component is what we should all be doing. Like that's written into most health and safety regulations. We've just been climbers, kind of doing our thing. So I think I'm so psyched that USAC is setting that example because I think it's so easy to avoid what feels like a really cumbersome process. I always share when I'm teaching work at height clinics. I was like a little ball of rage for about 2 weeks when I first started working with the system. I was like ready to throw it across the room. And then you just kind of figure out what works for you. And now it's easy peasy. Like it's not a hassle. There's like a whole bunch of stuff in your face for a minute. And then you're like, oh, I can just clip this here and I can just like arrange this way. And then it's not as cumbersome as it feels. But especially like if people are watching high level events and we're not seeing it, it becomes like easier to like not feel like it's necessary. So I'm really psyched that USA Climbing is like setting that example. So, yay, thank you.
I'll add something too because I've been operating with the two rope system since I don't know, maybe 2015. I forget when I first got introduced to it, but um, I had a similar mentality where I was like, oh, this is like bulky, right? But then I remember like if it became normalized, and then I remember doing an event at a gym, I don't know, somewhere in the middle of the country, I forget what it was, and they didn't have that system, and so I went there and actually kind of felt sort of like naked. I was just like, oh, I don't have this thing. It's kind of like, we all buckle our seatbelt, or well, we're supposed to, when we're driving, right? And then, all of a sudden you like don't have a seatbelt, and you're like, oh, I feel exposed. And so it was an interesting shift for me. I remember that moment where I was just like, uh, this feels wrong now. And so I know that's not the case with everyone. Some people will maybe die on that hill. But I do think it's
I
a good
mean,
thing to move forward on.
I would hope that the more people use, whatever argument you have against two rope systems and sitting in a podium seat, to your point, it's not that cumbersome. It's like, sure, there's a learning curve to it. But all the other things of work at height standards of like hauling and placement and positioning, man, I feel like my career would be extended like 15 years if I wasn't doing the things that I was doing 15 years ago. How many minor labrum tears and elbow tendonitis and bicep things have you dealt with from just like hand over handing a 60-pound haul bag of crap 40 feet up the wall? Um, they're just tools for longevity in addition to like safer work environments.
And tools for the longevity of the industry too. because, if there is an incident, knocking on like 8 pieces of wood, but the industry that we are working in has a lot of risk, and the our ability to function and do this job, and for indoor climbing gyms to exist in the way that they do, some of that hinges on our ability to follow workplace standards and best practices. And if we get too many eyes saying, "Hey, what are y'all doing?" then things are potentially going to change in a way that we don't want to see. And so if we can take this into our own hands and decide, like, this is how we are going to interpret health and safety regulations in a way that like is compliant and allows us to do our work, and we can defend that, then we can maintain this industry that we all really care about.
I'm guessing there's maybe one burning question that a lot of the viewers who are watching this are asking, and that is, how does this apply to me?
Yeah.
Right? So like there there's probably a whole bunch of different people listening to this, people who are already sort of in the system. Maybe they're already L1, they're looking to get their L2. Maybe they're already L3, maybe they're L4, whatever. What does this change mean for them? Do you want to kind of like walk us through that, Jay?
Yeah, I think we don't know exactly how this works. We're figuring it out. We're learning. Right now, the plan is that this will be applicable to new entries into our system. So starting in 2027, if people have already, um, gone to the level one clinic or gone to the level two clinic, they won't be stripped of their USAC climate certifications. Our hope is to find ways to get as many people certified that are in our system and are kind of grandfathered into the USAC climate system already. Uh, we talked about this briefly in our like little planning call, and I like just trying to wrap my head around how we implement that over the next 5 years, realistically, with the hundreds of people from level five to level that have completed the level two certificate already. Um, it just seems daunting. Hopefully we can find a way to accelerate it. But that's the goal. The goal is to get everybody up to speed and at least understand the standards, and if not, have that certification. As a prerequisite, it will just be for new entries coming into the 2027 clinic season, which generally for us, we work off of a calendar year. So anything that is planned for or will be planned for the remainder of this year will not quite offer have the requisite in place. My hope is that towards the end of this 2026, the second half of the year, which isn't God, too far away, clinics and courses that we have planned or will be planned, we will be able to offer um, assessments and or certifications within the PRS system at those as an option, um, and, and as an encouraged option. I don't see it as a harmful thing for anyone to go through both at the same time. Um, but yeah, I think maybe I kind of got off topic a little bit.
No, you're good. Well, and thinking about like that daunting process, I think one of the ways that I've been thinking about it is this is a very very multi-pronged approach, right? But if your head instructors are able to provide assessments and certifications, and we talk a lot like within that the certification space about, all right, we're training people, we're teaching them the information that they need to know in order to pass an assessment, right? And the assessment is what gets you that certification. And so if you can come in and demonstrate your skills without taking the course, great. We can assess those like minimum criteria, say, you know how to do this, you demonstrated this, like you exhibited these techniques, great. So you don't necessarily need to do a course. There's any number of people that can provide that assessment. So it'll be like your instructors. If somebody comes in for their L2 and can demonstrate that they've already done all of the things, that's a space where like if that's how you guys decide to run it, they could potentially, assess a candidate's ability to pass their work at height level 1, PRS level 2 at the same time. Same thing for like events. If somebody comes into a national event, you could do the same assessment. The CWA has very specific assessment criteria that like we as providers look for. But even beyond you guys, there's a number of gyms that are adopting this as their training. Head setters are getting their provider certifications. So if you've got your provider and you're a head setter, you can do the same assessment. You can teach the information. We've got all of the information, like online courses and information for you, and then you can provide the assessment so that if we're hitting it from the USAC instructors and head setters or directors of setting, and then there's also individuals like myself that like travel around and teach stuff. The more different places are able to provide these, the faster it grows, and then the less cumbersome it is for any like single body to try to like do everything. Because yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, and I think that's you hit a really good point there. Is like our goal isn't to make this a hurdle for people to get into our system. It is to ensure that they have the base level of skills to do it. And you touched on it, Foxman. Thanks for reminding me that yeah, there will like our plan. Obviously, we need to go through the provider course here in May, which is what gosh a month or two away from us now. Get through that and have an understanding of like how quickly and like what the timeline it would be for us to offer these provider or not sorry offer these certification assessments. So we're not trying to create a hurdle or a block for people to come to our system, but if somebody says, I feel confident that I don't need to go through a whole PRS course and I can pass these certifications. I already use these systems. I understand the standard. Like awesome. Like our hope is that it's like a half day addition to our clinics ahead of time, and we can run these assessments and we can get these people certified all in one swoop, rather than having to say, oh, you have to go through this whole thing and then come to us. Like we're not trying to create hoops. We're just trying to help implement and to solidify like a bit of a best practice standard for what we do in our industry.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's perfect. I know we got a few questions leading into this, and one of the questions was just about cost, like how much it's going to cost route setters. And uh, that's a really fair question, and I think it's going to be really dependent on how they're getting that certification, right? So if you're a setter at a gym where your director of route setting or head setter is a provider, probably not going to cost you anything to get that certification. If you go to a CWA like certification summit, it will cost you more, but you'll be able to get like potentially your work at height too at the same time, right? Um, if you have if you go to the USAC events, like you guys will set pricing for that, but there's going to be like a lot of different models for it, and we're hopeful that gyms will support their setters in getting this, because if gyms have documentation that their setters have been trained to meet these standards, it only serves the gym's interests, right? You want to have professional development that like makes your setter a better like USAC route setter. I got like really twisted up in my words there, right? And then also if they can walk away with their CWA certification at the same time, like to me, it seems like a no-brainer, but I'm incredibly biased on this one. But again, we're trying to make sure, like on the CWA side, that like it's not cost prohibitive, right? It is education. It's necessary education is training to do your job.
Yeah,
I
I
think
think
the
you hit a
provider
couple.
model. Oh, sorry, Jeremy.
Sorry,
I was
no, go
going to
ahead,
say
Justin.
the provider model is like, in my mind, the best scalable model where we get a bunch of people throughout the country that can offer these things, whether they're directors or head route setters or, national sort of event or instructors or of some sort. And then all of a sudden now you don't have to travel all the way across the country and pay for lodging and pay for a hotel and, get all of that. Like maybe they come to your gym because they were already coming, or maybe like uh, I don't know. There's just lots of ways, and each gym is going to have to figure out what is best for them. But I'm optimistic that it's going to start scaling. The more people that have it, the safer the industry will be.
Yeah, that's similar to what I was going to say. Is that I feel like it's an investment in for gyms, it's an investment in not only their setters' progression and ongoing education and development, but it's also seems to me like it would be a pretty good investment in like a safety net for any sort of litigation or potential free situations you may find yourself in a climbing gym that in an activity that's inherently dangerous. Yeah, seems doesn't seem like it hurts. And our objective as USA Climbing, we're not looking at this as a huge money maker. There are some fees associated with providing these instruction or these certifications through CWA that we will need to add on, and we'll need to cover costs for our instructors to fly a day earlier and things like that. But this big misconception that the USA Climbing level 1, level 2 certifications are these giant money making things. Like when you do the math on it, uh, I think last year revenue lines were like $32,000 total. Um, it's not a ton of money to a massive multi-million dollar expense a year. So we're not raking in the dough. We're not looking to, make a ton of money off of this. We're looking to, and like I said earlier, ensure that we've got a filter of minimum level of professionalism and safety, and then help try to spread this thing as leaders in the industry. So hopefully, it's not seen as a money grab by USA Climbing.
No, I mean, I think there's always costs associated. Like, I mean, we price both for Vortex and Go Teach, and then when CWA hosts events, like it costs money to move instructors into places and to ship gear. And I think when I think about the cost of certifications, my thought always goes to the cost of an incident or litigation, right? And these, like, all the training in the world isn't going to prevent every incident, right? But providing training on how to use equipment according to industry best practices, providing documentation for that training, it can only help. It only like serves to help protect, again, this sport that we all like and this industry that we care about. And I think there's been, it, with the CWA being a voluntary standard, I think it's easy for a lot of route setters and gyms to be like, oh, it's voluntary, I don't need to. Again, we're interpreting the health and safety, the actual regulation, which is not voluntary. We just say, you know, we suggest that you do it this way because it's probably better than, like I said before, building a scaffold. But the goal is protecting the industry, not making oodles of money.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, I think we asked the questions that we were asked to ask. I'm looking through our prep doc because is like I can talk certifications until the cows come home because I care about them a lot because I'm a giant nerd. Um, but yeah, did we miss anything? Is there anything that you wanted to say that you didn't get a chance to say?
I don't think so. I'm just flipping through the document as well, make sure I didn't miss anything major. No, I
I think
think,
something. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think, this has been a long time coming. And I think it's a good thing. I was part of the original setting committee with CWA in I think 2016, and seats have changed and evolved as they should. And I think it was 2016. It's like, going on 10 years of working on this, and a lot of people have poured a lot of voluntary time into doing this, and it's really cool to see it finally coming to head. And it's nice to now be in a position that I can help again, coming almost full circle back into this thing of implementation. Yeah, I'm excited. I think there's going to be hiccups, and we're going to make mistakes along the way, but it's cool to now have multiple groups of people from the setting side of things at USA Climbing and the committee at CWA, and like your whole task force of people that are chipping away at this, working together. It feels good, and it feels like it's a step in the right direction. I'm super psyched.
Yeah, I think the collaboration across the industry is really exciting. Um, I'm really excited to see where it goes. And I was going to say, I am sure that there's going to be questions, and like I am, more than happy. We can be a resource. Jeho, I assume people who are within the USAC system have your contact information. Um, because yeah, it's a change, and changes are often difficult, even just from like a conceptual standpoint. I think that this is going to be smoother than a lot of people who aren't familiar with the work at height standard anticipate. Because I hear a lot of like, Oh no. But it's not that bad. And you know, just speaking for myself, like I try to be as much of a resource as I can to like communicate so that people understand the whys and the hows. And if I don't know something, I, do my best to say, I don't know, and point people in the right direction. So if you're watching this and you have questions or deep underlying concerns, like reach out because we want to be helpful. Make this go smoothly for everybody.
Yeah, and a lot of those questions may come up that we don't have the answers to, but we'll prompt a thought process or a collaboration to find a solution to it. I'm sure one of the big questions or concerns for a lot of people is will be the costs of kits, and they are not cheap. There's no two ways about it. But name another industry where we ask people to put themselves in a dangerous situation, high up off the ground with tools and things that don't have those costs associated. My brother's an arborist, and an arborist kit is not cheap. I think about windmill workers or oil rig workers or things like that. The safety of those people is investing in the safety of those people is an investment in those industries and in the companies that exist in those industries. And yeah, it's just something that, getting your
Yeah.
gym shut down for God forbid, fatal injury is going to cost you a lot more money than investing in a $1,500 kit for that person's safety in the long term. Uh,
Well, and
and also, like to your point
for
earlier, the greater impact to our industry.
Fox and I were just on a call with a gym talking about this potential adoption, and one of the things that they cited was that perceived cost. And then we asked a couple of clarifying questions. We're like, well, what equipment are you currently using? And then what we found out is they're like already halfway to the finish line, right? Like they have sit harnesses that can be converted into full body harnesses. They only need effectively two or three pieces of gear rather than like the full kit. And I think that that is something that I think is worth sharing because you might already be closer than you think.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a
Well,
really good
and
point.
what I was going to add on too is like I think a lot of the perception of this gear as being a new thing is very common in the climbing industry, um, but it's not new in other industries. Like this equipment has been used. If you are climbing cell towers, if you're an arborist, if you're inspecting oil rigs. I taught this course, work at height course, to a bunch of Spratt guys, and they were like, "You guys aren't. Not everybody's using this. Why is what?" And so I think that's a good perspective to have. Is like it's new to us, but it's not new. We just climbers are like, I understand how to use ropes to get places. I'm just going to do it the way that I know how. And there's other industries that have been following these practices for a minute, and the equipment is out there. Like you said, it's not cheap, but it's not as expensive as a lot of people have been bracing themselves for, too, to your point, Justin.
Yeah, I think when
Yeah.
I went through I think in 2017, I did the work at height certification course at Petzl, and they were just borrowing things from other industries. They're like, we're not inventing new things. We're just finding things that apply to what we do. We're not reinventing the wheel. We're not inventing new equipment. This equipment exists already. We're just implementing it into our little bubble that's flown under the radar for as long as it has.
Exactly.
Some of the route setters that I've talked to that have maybe prickled with some of the adoption of this type of stuff, some of the questions that I often get are like, well, we're able to use this when we're just climbing for ourselves, like outside. Like, why do we need this extra layer? And I think one of the things that hit home was like, are you working or are you like recreating? And those two things are very different. One is governed by OSHA and one is not. Like you can take as many personal risks as you want while you're climbing outside. Like if you're not going to wear a helmet outside, like that's your choice. Um, but you're not like being asked to do that work by an employer. And I think that's like the biggest difference. And I remember like seeing some of my staff being like, "Oh, okay. Like I may still not want to wear a helmet, but like I'm much more willing to do that when you explain it in those terms."
I had a
But
kid
yeah, and I
once
mean,
tell
even like
me,
the use of even the
uh,
use of like down versus synthetic in alpine or in certain big wall environments, and like what it costs to be rescued if you're hypothermic and you're wearing down and you're versus synthetic that doesn't do the job. Um, it's just being prepared for the activity that you're going to do. And Justin, to your point, like recreating is not governed by anybody other than yourself. Whereas people that are against this, like, we're not against it, but you have those prickly feels, maybe aren't taking into account the fact that there's more at stake than just their own personal decision. So it's a
And
really
I
good point.
once worked with a guy who told me my favorite thing that I think I've ever heard, which is he was asked to do something bananas. And, the person who asked him to do the bananas things walked away. And I'm like, do it this other way. He's like, oh, yeah, I'm not doing that. My life is not worth $17 an hour. I'm going to do it the safer way. I was like, oh, you're my favorite. Like, yeah. Like, if you want to go do something fun, sure. But, like, you're not getting paid to die here today. Like, that's not what this is. So maybe hyperbolic of me, but still, yeah. Well, I think we did it. I'm sure there's questions that are going to come up that we didn't answer, but we still exist in the future, as far as I know, sitting here today.
Hopefully.
Yeah. So ask questions. We're pretty
Yeah.
friendly.
I think most people either have or can find my email address pretty easily on the USAC Planning website. Yeah, as we roll this thing out, there will be questions. Like I said earlier, hopefully, maybe some of those questions will prompt thoughts around things we didn't think about, and we'll have to find solutions to that as it happens. I don't have all the answers to our integration quite yet. It's still a work in progress. We see it as a good thing, and we're going to learn this together as these two groups, and ideally as across all of the people that participate in our thing as craftspeople doing it. So yeah, I I anticipate questions, and I welcome them. So um, find my email and contact me if you have them, or maybe start with Fox and Justin. But
Well, I was gonna ask Scott too if that's something that we can put in like notes too. I don't know. I listen to a lot of podcasts and they're like, you can find this in our show notes. And I'm like, I've never said that out loud. But, especially knowing that there's going to be questions about this particular topic, that could be a helpful thing.
We'll add show notes links to Vortex route setting and the USA Climbing route setting webpage as well. So,
Easy
perfect.
peasy.
Sounds good.
Thanks.
thank
Thanks,
you so
Jeremy.
much. Yeah, Jeremy, Justin, Foxman for having this discussion.